I can answer this question this way. In the case of what Peter's talking about, he's approaching it from the hard money perspective. Now, I've been trying to teach people two languages here for the last 4 odd years. The two languages. The first language, for those of you who've picked up on it, is the language of hard money. Well, that's an easy one. I can teach a 10-year-old. I can teach a 6-year-old that. That's actually, little kids can understand all that. The other language is more subtle, and that's the language of idiocy, which is what we have currently. So because we have a system of idiocy, you have to be able to learn to speak in that. You have to be able to learn to go along with all that. And usually that means logical extremities. In other words, going to the extreme with everything, that's why I keep pointing this out. So, and I did a behind the scenes video on this very issue of minimum wage, where it's like, okay, Peter Schiff says no minimum wage. He's talking about that as though the currency still has value, as though the dollar still has any kind of value. The dollar has no value. It's not mathematical. It's not intrinsic, nothing. There's nothing about the US dollar that has any kind of value to it. This, by the way, is why most of the talk shows, like guys who say, like, how come you can't be on Rogan or something? They're not going to have, just forget it. They're never going to have me on, because as soon as we talk about this, I will expose all of it very quickly, because I can speak both languages fluently. I speak the language of hard money fluently. I also speak the language of idiocy fluently. It's a talent. Okay. It's something that you hone over years. Okay. Well, so when you see it that way and you say, okay, hold on a second here. The dollar has no intrinsic or mathematical value. It's printed from nothing. It's conjured out of nothing by a cartel arrangement between a so-called private bank, whatever that means, and the government, whatever that means at this point. So because of that arrangement, they have this idea of just keep inflating everything, and every number go up perpetually. Look at that stock market. Look at that GDP. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing. It's just inflating it. Well, if you're going to inflate the currency on the people that are doing all the work, well, then it stands to reason that you would also be inflating the wages. Or are you just trying to enslave them? And you want to inflate everything, but keep them working for nothing and perpetually make it worse and worse and worse. And keep in mind, that's why your quality is going away. That's why there's all these videos of like, why is it customer service sucks? And why is it's because no one's going to bring their A game. No one's going to bring their A game to do any work for anybody if they're being paid peanuts. Would you do it? Would anybody? No. I mean, look, you either do it out of charity and goodwill. I've done that. Lots of people have done that. Lots of people out there in the real world have brought their A game to a situation where they were receiving no money, but they knew that in the beginning. They knew up front that it was basically a charitable situation. They were going to show, like the Amish is an example, right? They show up and they build these really nice little houses and everything that are really good quality. They do that, and they do that knowing full well that this is out of charity and goodwill. That's it. When you're saying, hey, take a job and I'm going to pay you, and then you're going to, with the trade-off being day in and day out, same thing kind of thing, and we want you to bring your A game every day. Like, okay, if I'm doing that, I want to be able to at least live half the lifestyle that a professional football player makes. At least half. I mean, like, come on, because if they got to bring their A game, and many of them do not. Sports fans know that. I mean, if you're going to have to do that every day, okay, then I want to be able to function in the economy in which you have created. You created this mess. You created this nightmare of print money. You created this nightmare of print money for endless wars. Print money for endless subsidies for illegals. Print money for endless subsidies to apparently every other country except ours, right? Print money for all kinds of stuff. You created that. So if you create that nightmare, and then I say, okay, if I want to be a worker, okay, because you don't really have much of a choice, right? So, okay, I'm going to work in this situation. Well, then I'm going to play the game you're playing, because you're creating a nightmare. I'm going to create a nightmare for you, which means you need to pay me more money, which means, we need to figure out some way that you need to pay me enough money to get me interested in the job. I just asked this yesterday. Would you take a job seriously for $185 an hour? The overwhelming response from most people, dude, there are people out there that say, dude, I would change my entire existence to earn that kind of money? Yes, because that's enough money to play in their nonsense. They've got this weird game that they've created where number go up forever until it's just the point of stupid. So when you guys hear me talk about this, I'm trying to teach you the second language, because a lot of people who follow me in the beginning, they kind of understand the hard money language. Now, the people who understand the nonsense language and don't understand the hard money language, it's more difficult for them to learn the hard money language. It's a lot more difficult because they're still stuck in the nonsense game. This weird fake craziness that's been, again, created over decades by politicians and what's called political economy, which is why I hate politics personally, but I understand political economy, which is what we see now, right? So the orange messiah says jump and the economy says how high, and a bunch of people get wiped out or make a bunch of money respectively. And it's just back and forth, back and forth. There's no real, it's I'm waiting for him to come out and say, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Guess it and you win $1 billion. I'm waiting for that to happen because we're not that far away from that kind of stupidity. And so you see what I'm saying? So when I bring up the idea of, hey, we need to raise the minimum wage to the point of what most people would consider the ridiculous, even though it isn't, I can actually back it up mathematically, and I have on many occasions. Take the price of gold, whatever it is, times it by 1.83, divided by 40, that's the number. Because 1.83 ounces of gold is what you would have earned per week in 1971 for doing a full-time job, 40 hours a week, working at a gas station. Seriously, working at a gas station in 1971, earning the minimum wage, which was $1.60 an hour, was 1.83 ounces of gold. And why did the minimum wage have to become a thing? Well, it became a thing back in the day. If you go back even further, it became a thing because, once again, the people even then, they started to see the ridiculousness of this. They started to see that, hey, you're just printing money to pay for these wars, like World War I, World War II. You're just printing money. Like, there's no money to pay for any of this. Hence, that's why gold became illegal. That's why, FDR, on and on. Like, where all this stuff comes from. So rather than me trying to teach all of this history, because, I could, but nobody's going to listen to that. And I'm not a very good teacher at that anyway. So there are guys out there that are way better at that than I could ever be. What I can do is teach you the language of idiocy and tell you, dude, no, you need to take it to the logical conclusion and say, okay, if we're going to have an idiot economy, if we're going to have this fake nonsense weirdo economy that is based on nothing, has no intrinsic or mathematical value to it, it's always just number go up, and it's a big casino. These are all basically casino checks. That's really all a dollar is at this point. If that's really all it is, then okay, and you're going to print it out of nothing, well then I want the ridiculous as well. If you're going to be ridiculous, I'm going to be ridiculous in response. Make sense? You're not morally obligated to treat somebody any better than they treat you. Okay? You're just not. So because you're not morally obligated, then you're also not morally obligated or obligated in any other way to treat the economy any different than it treats you. So if the economy is just a bunch of nonsense, then your response should be nonsense. Does that scan? Are you guys getting that? I don't mean you specifically, but I'm saying just in general, are people understanding this? Now, in the Peter Schiff dream world, I'm not picking on Peter. I like Peter. I'm not picking on him. I'm saying if we actually had a hard money gold economy, not a gold-backed economy. No. We actually go backwards, and we actually have where people carry around little yellow metal discs or bags of gold dust to transact. I'm good with that. For real, I'm actually totally good with it. Well, I'll slow the economy down. I don't care. Why should I care if the economy slows down? People need to slow down anyway. People need to probably slow down and process things a little bit more before they do things anyway. Look at how many people, just go out there in the world and buy shit without thinking about it. They don't even think twice about it. Yeah, maybe we should be thinking about it. Maybe you should actually be processing some of this stuff. Maybe Dave Ramsey is correct about that. I happen to agree with him on that stuff. And Dave and I have our differences, but not on that. I do think people should process it a bit more, and I do think that people shouldn't be in debt. You should not want debt. So I hope that makes sense.